Lewis Hamilton was sabotaged today at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix after being given more fuel than necessary, increasing the weight of the car and cutting down its speed. Stay until the very end to find out about Hamilton's explosive anger and the shocking leaks that will spread across social media tomorrow. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. What unfolded in Baku today has already ignited a storm that refuses to die down, an episode destined to live in Formula One history as one of the most outrageous, scandalous, and unsettling moments of recent years. To glance at the results sheet, one might be tempted to dismiss Hamilton's 8th place as just another weekend where Ferrari fell short, a missed podium in a season already riddled with inconsistencies. To the casual viewer, it could be brushed off as a lack of raw pace, perhaps another bungled strategy call, or simply an unlucky day in the office. But the whispers that began circulating within minutes of the checkered flag suggest something darker, something that cuts far deeper than just performance struggles. This was not merely a tactical misstep. According to those with knowledge of what transpired inside Ferrari's inner sanctum, this was a blunder, or an act, that Hamilton himself reportedly described to confidants as either a betrayal or a mistake so colossal it could only be classified as bordering on sabotage. The fuel scandal, as it is already being dubbed in hushed tones across the paddock, has left rivals in disbelief and fans enraged. Formula One is a sport where fuel calculations are treated with surgical precision. Teams employ armies of analysts and engineers who crunch data relentlessly, running thousands of simulations to ensure that the car carries just enough fuel to complete every possible permutation of the race. Safety cars, red flags, unexpected weather changes, and aggressive strategies. Carry even a kilogram too much, and performance begins to slip. A few kilos can mean tenths of a second per lap, which over a race distance translates to lost positions, squandered opportunities, and shattered results. Yet what happened to Hamilton was not a matter of a kilo here or there. According to insiders close to the team, his car rolled onto the grid carrying such a severe fuel surplus that it handicapped him from the very beginning, turning what should have been a finely tuned racing machine into a lumbering, heavy beast dragging itself around the streets of Baku. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. The evidence was there almost immediately. On the opening laps, Hamilton's voice crackled over the radio with a sharp edge rarely heard from him so early in a race. He spoke of a car that felt stuck, unresponsive, sluggish through the corners, resistant to rotation, lacking the nimbleness he had been promised. His words carried not only frustration but disbelief, like a man who knew something was wrong, though he could not yet name it. "It feels heavy," he muttered at one point, his tone clipped, bordering on incredulous. And heavy it was. Rivals surged past him, some of them in machinery that Ferrari should have comfortably beaten. Each overtake was a dagger, a public humiliation for a driver whose reputation rests on extracting every ounce of performance from whatever he drives. Hamilton was fighting battles he should never have been fighting, defending against cars he should have been attacking, and with every lap the deficit grew. By the midpoint of the race, the situation had become unbearable. The world feed caught only glimpses, an exasperated shake of the head, a terse hand gesture, eyes that burned with fury, but those listening to the raw team radio captured the full extent of his anger. He demanded answers, pressing his engineers to explain why the car felt as though it had been shackled. His tone escalated from confusion to disbelief, and then to outright rage. Yet the pit wall never told him the truth in the heat of battle. Whether out of denial, fear, or deliberate silence, they gave him nothing but vague reassurances, forcing him to endure lap after lap in a car doomed by an error made before the lights even went out. The paddock erupted once the details began to leak. Rivals could scarcely believe that Ferrari, a team with such vast resources and a reputation for precision, could commit an error of this magnitude. Some suggested incompetence, others whispered something far more sinister. How could a miscalculation of such scale have passed through layer after layer of checks? Could it really be an accident, or was it, as one rival engineer bluntly put it, an inside job? These murmurs spread like wildfire, feeding speculation that Ferrari's internal politics, already infamous, may have once again sabotaged their own cause. Hamilton's fury was palpable long after the race had ended. Witnesses inside the garage reported him storming out of the hospitality unit, expression cold, jaw set, refusing to engage with anyone. He left behind an atmosphere so tense that even mechanics stood frozen, unsure what to say or do. To those who have followed his career, this was more than simple frustration at a bad result. It was the fury of a man who felt betrayed, of a champion whose trust in his team had been violated. Subscribe to stay informed about the latest Formula One news. For Hamilton, whose move to Ferrari was framed as the culmination of a dream, this episode may represent the very moment the dream curdled into a nightmare. The fallout is only beginning. Fans have flooded social media with accusations. Journalists are already digging for the smoking gun, and rival teams are demanding explanations. The governing body may be forced to step in, not because of rules broken but because the optics of such a monumental error are too damaging to ignore. Whatever the truth, the damage inside Ferrari is already catastrophic. Trust has been shattered, suspicion lingers in every corner of the paddock, and Hamilton himself now faces a decision that could alter not only his own legacy but Ferrari's future for years to come. When the checkered flag dropped and Hamilton crawled across the line in a miserable 8th place, the air around the circuit felt like it had been sliced open. The grandstands, buzzing moments earlier with anticipation, seemed to fall into a stunned hush, and the television cameras caught the image of a driver whose frustration could no longer be contained. Hamilton's face was a storm, jaw clenched, eyes burning with barely concealed rage, his every gesture jerky and abrupt. The composure he had so often mastered throughout his career, that polished facade he wore in front of the world, was stripped away in seconds. He unbuckled his belts with violence, ripped off his gloves, and threw his helmet aside as he climbed out of the scarlet machine that had betrayed him. The car, meant to symbolize hope and resurgence, stood motionless and silent behind him like an enemy that had just dealt him the deepest cut. Ignoring the throng of reporters and the wall of microphones waiting at the pit lane exit, Hamilton stormed forward with singular purpose. His stride was unrelenting, his eyes fixed on the distant red motorhome that housed the men and women he now viewed not as partners but as adversaries. Journalists shouted questions, cameras flashed desperately, fans screamed his name, but nothing penetrated his focus. He moved like a man possessed, driven by a cocktail of fury, humiliation, and disbelief. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as electric, as though everyone in the paddock knew something extraordinary was about to erupt. When Hamilton reached the Ferrari quarters, he didn't pause, didn't hesitate, didn't even acknowledge the staff standing guard at the entrance. He pushed past them with a force that made clear this was not going to be a calm debrief. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound that seemed to reverberate through the building. Inside, Frédéric Vasseur sat with a group of engineers, their faces already tense, their bodies stiff with the weight of expectation. For a few seconds, silence hung over the room, the kind of silence that comes before a storm breaks. Then Hamilton's voice tore through it, raw, booming, and filled with an anger that bordered on volcanic. Those who were within earshot outside later recounted his words with awe, describing them as among the most searing accusations ever hurled by a driver at his team. He unleashed a torrent of rage, accusing the squad of betrayal, of systematically stripping him of not only the chance to fight for victory but of his pride as a competitor. His voice shook with indignation as he demanded answers, spitting out questions that cut like knives. How could Ferrari, the most historic name in motorsport, fall to such depths of incompetence? How could a team with the resources of Maranello make an error that would embarrass even a struggling junior outfit? He told them this was not a slip, not a small blunder to be brushed aside, but a disgrace that tarnished everything he had come here to build. Hamilton reminded them, with unrelenting ferocity, of the sacrifices he had made to join the Scuderia, of the career-altering decision to leave behind a team where he was family, of the leap of faith he had taken to embrace Ferrari's dream. He recited the promises that had been whispered to him during negotiations, the assurances of competitive machinery, of a united vision, of an opportunity to cement his legacy in red. And then, like tearing pages from a book, he shredded those words in front of them, accusing the team of failing to honor their commitments, of betraying the faith he had placed in them. His anger spiraled beyond frustration, it became suspicion. He questioned whether what had happened on track was simply incompetence or something far darker. He dared to suggest that the mistake might not have been accidental at all, that perhaps someone within the team wanted him broken, diminished, humiliated. He spoke of sabotage, of being set up to fail, and his voice carried a tone that made it impossible to dismiss his words as mere heat-of-the-moment fury. The engineers sat frozen, faces drained, unable to mount a defense as Hamilton's accusations battered the room. Vasseur, stunned and visibly shaken, attempted to interject, to calm him, but every attempt was cut down by a sharper retort, a harsher rebuke. Hamilton's fury had momentum, and once unleashed, it rolled over everything in its path. Witnesses outside the closed door said they could hear his shouts echoing through the motorhome walls, each syllable brimming with raw emotion, anger, betrayal, despair. It was a scene unlike anything Formula One had witnessed in years, a legend of the sport tearing into the very institution he had once believed would carry him to immortality. The outburst lasted minutes that felt like an eternity, a storm of words and emotions that left the room charged with tension so thick it seemed almost physical. When Hamilton finally fell silent, the air was heavy, suffocating, as though all oxygen had been consumed by the fire he had unleashed. Those who were present will remember it forever as the moment the fragile bond between Hamilton and Ferrari cracked so violently that it seemed beyond repair, a confrontation that transformed whispers of discord into undeniable proof of a relationship in collapse. Those who were inside the Ferrari motorhome that evening will never forget what unfolded. The air was thick, heavy, almost impossible to breathe, as the confrontation between Lewis Hamilton and Frederic Vasseur spiraled into something no one could have predicted. Vasseur, a man renowned throughout the paddock for his composure, his methodical approach, and his ability to remain cool even under the most ferocious spotlight, looked nothing like the leader Ferrari had leaned on in moments of pressure. His skin had drained of all color, his jaw locked in tension, his hands trembling ever so slightly as Hamilton's accusations rained down on him with the force of an unrelenting storm. Every word the seven-time world champion hurled at him carried the weight of betrayal, every interruption struck like a blade, cutting deeper into the fragile veneer of unity that Ferrari had tried so desperately to project. Vasseur attempted to rally, to explain, to assure his star driver that the calamity was nothing more sinister than a technical anomaly, a misstep buried within the labyrinth of fuel consumption algorithms, the kind of rare but costly miscalculation that can appear in the hyper-complex systems governing today's cars. He spoke of data points, of marginal errors, of misread calibrations that spiraled into a race-altering disaster. But Hamilton was beyond hearing. His patience, already worn to shreds by months of disappointment and unfulfilled promises, snapped. Each attempt at explanation was cut off mid-sentence by Hamilton's voice, louder, sharper, filled with a fury that reverberated through the motorhome like thunderclaps. His tone carried not just anger but humiliation, the unmistakable sting of a man who felt betrayed by those who should have been protecting him. He leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Vasseur's, and the words came with a venom few had ever heard from him in private. He shouted that excuses meant nothing, that what Ferrari had delivered was beyond unacceptable, that he had crossed into Maranello not to be dressed up as a savior only to be reduced to a laughingstock. At one terrifying moment, his open palm crashed against the tabletop with such violent force that the sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. Engineers, seated just meters away, flinched instinctively, as though struck themselves, their eyes darting to the floor to avoid drawing Hamilton's wrath in their direction. He labeled the blunder disgraceful, a stain not only on his reputation but on Ferrari's, dragging the proud red name through the mud in front of the world. He accused the team of breaking the sacred trust that binds driver and machine, insisting that without that bond, success becomes impossible. The silence that followed each of Hamilton's outbursts was suffocating. No one dared to move. Mechanics sat stiff, their tools idle, engineers frozen in place as though any sound, any movement, would ignite the fire even further. Junior staff, unaccustomed to such a raw explosion of fury, fought to hold back tears. Some broke completely, slipping out quietly in the hope that their absence would shield them from the fallout. Whispers later suggested that some of the youngest recruits to the team had been left trembling, their nerves shattered by the violence of the confrontation, realizing with sinking hearts that the dream of working for Ferrari could turn, in an instant, into a nightmare. But even as fear gripped the motorhome, a different undercurrent ran among the more seasoned insiders. Many murmured that Hamilton was justified, that such a monumental blunder could not be brushed away as an innocent mistake. After all, Formula One is not forgiving. Margins are measured in thousandths of a second, in molecules of fuel, in strategies so refined that any slip is catastrophic. To make an error of this scale was unthinkable for a team of Ferrari's caliber. Was it sheer incompetence? A collapse of internal communication? Or, as some dared to whisper when the doors were closed and ears turned away, was there something more sinister lurking beneath the surface? Speculation grew rapidly, fueled by the knowledge that Ferrari is not just a racing team but an empire of politics, egos, and internal factions where loyalty is often to individuals rather than to the collective. Some wondered if this was a mistake at all, or if it had been orchestrated by those inside the organization who resented Hamilton's arrival, who feared his power, his voice, his ability to reshape the culture of Maranello around himself. To undermine him with a miscalculation so public, so humiliating, would send a clear message: you are not untouchable here. The thought lingered heavily in the paddock that night. Could it be sabotage? Could the errors be deliberate acts from those intent on protecting their own positions, their influence, their history within the Scuderia? In a place like Ferrari, where power struggles are woven into the very fabric of the institution, where the weight of heritage clashes daily with the need for progress, nothing can ever be fully dismissed. The idea that Hamilton, a man who had conquered the sport with precision and strength, could be reduced to questioning his very team's loyalty added yet another layer of darkness to an already fractured relationship. Inside that motorhome, what unfolded was more than just a heated argument over fuel modeling. It was a rupture of trust, a breaking point that laid bare the fragile foundation upon which the Hamilton-Ferrari partnership had been built. It was a night of shouting, accusations, fear and whispers, an evening that crystallized the sense that something fundamental had shattered, something that no apology or technical briefing could ever repair. And as the echoes of Hamilton's fury hung in the air long after he had stormed out, the question lingered over every trembling staff member and every anxious onlooker. Was this the moment Ferrari lost not only a race but the very soul of their alliance with one of the greatest drivers the sport has ever seen? What makes this entire saga even more combustible is not just the incident itself but the long chain of frustrations and disappointments that have piled up since Lewis Hamilton set foot in Maranello. From the moment he put on the red overalls, the expectation was that this would be the marriage of passion and performance, a union that would deliver poetry on the track. Yet reality has been cruel. Week after week, mistakes have mounted, questionable strategies that squandered opportunities, technical flaws that left him powerless against rivals, and constant disagreements over the vision for the car's development. His faith in the Scuderia has not been shattered in one blow but chipped away piece by piece, race after race, until only fragments of trust remain. And then came today, the day that may have ripped away the last thread holding the relationship together. To hand him a machine burdened with unnecessary weight, forcing him to start the race compromised before even reaching the first corner, felt like an insult disguised as incompetence. For Hamilton, whose career has been built on an obsession with detail, on the pursuit of perfection in every corner, every lap, every decision, such a blunder cuts deeper than any rival's victory ever could. It was not just another tactical slip or a technical misstep. It was, in his eyes, a betrayal of the very principles he embodies. He has never tolerated mediocrity, and to be placed in a position where mediocrity is engineered into his car by his own team is something he cannot forgive. What happened today was not simply a mistake, it was a wound to his identity, a violation of everything that has defined his relentless climb to the pinnacle of motorsport. As the sun sets over the paddock, the atmosphere feels toxic, charged with whispers and speculation that ripple through every garage and hospitality suite. Conversations are hushed but frantic, rumors multiplying with every passing minute. Some insiders claim that Hamilton is already considering his escape, that this latest disaster has snapped the last remaining bond between him and Frédéric Vasseur's leadership. Others suggest that rival teams, sensing vulnerability and chaos within Ferrari, are already moving behind the scenes, ready to extend lifelines, eager to seize the opportunity to lure one of the sport's greatest competitors into their fold. The idea of Hamilton walking away, mid-project, would have once sounded unthinkable. Tonight, it feels not only possible but imminent. For Ferrari, the humiliation is profound. This is not merely another lost race. This is a scar that will linger in the history of the team. To have one of the greatest champions ever to sit in a cockpit publicly humiliated by their own errors is a spectacle that rivals and critics will not forget. The accusations, whether they lean toward incompetence or whisper about sabotage, cut into the very heart of Ferrari's reputation. Once, the team's name evoked images of brilliance, glory, and unmatched heritage. Now, it risks becoming synonymous with dysfunction, fragility, and broken trust. The Tifosi, whose loyalty has been unshakable through decades of triumphs and failures, are left speechless, their faith tested in ways they never imagined. The press is circling like vultures, feeding on the chaos, already drafting headlines that scream with scandal. Sabotage, betrayal, champion undermined by his own team. These are the words now echoing across television broadcasts and online platforms. Every journalist knows that this story will dominate the news cycle for weeks, perhaps longer, because it is more than a sporting failure. It is a drama of trust, power, and ego unraveling in real time. Hamilton, a man who commands respect on and off the track, now stands at the center of a narrative of humiliation, portrayed as a warrior sabotaged by the very army meant to carry him into battle. In the garages of rival teams, eyes are wide with anticipation. Engineers, strategists, and executives smell opportunity in the air, sensing that Ferrari's implosion could trigger a seismic shift in the grid's balance of power. For Mercedes, whispers of reconciliation already float, the idea of bringing their prodigal champion home becoming less fantasy and more reality with every passing hour. Red Bull and Audi too, are mentioned in hushed tones, their ambitions intersecting with the possibility of Hamilton's availability. Every competitor knows that when a titan wavers, the entire landscape can shift, and tonight, that shift feels closer than ever. This is no longer just about a single race or a single mistake. It is about loyalty betrayed, about a champion questioning the very foundation beneath him, and about a team that has allowed its own errors to morph into scandal. The paddock trembles with the weight of it, fans rage or despair in equal measure, and the future of one of the greatest stories in Formula One history now hangs by a thread, ready to snap in whichever direction Hamilton chooses to pull. As Hamilton emerged from the motorhome, there was an electricity in the air that seemed to ripple through the paddock, a crackling tension that silenced even the most relentless reporters. His expression was carved in stone, a mixture of raw fury, disbelief, and the kind of icy determination that only appears when a man has finally reached the point of no return. He did not slow down, did not acknowledge the barrage of questions that flew at him from every direction. Instead, he cut through the crowd with a cold glare sharp enough to slice through steel, a glare that made it clear he had nothing left to say, because words could no longer capture the scale of betrayal he felt. Seasoned journalists, who had followed him across continents and witnessed him in the highest highs and lowest lows, exchanged glances in stunned silence. They had never seen him like this, never witnessed such unrestrained rage emanating from the seven-time champion, a man who had built his career on composure and unbreakable mental steel. Those closest to him whispered that this was unlike anything before, that even in the aftermath of championship heartbreaks or controversial penalties, he had never looked so utterly incensed, so completely consumed by anger. This wasn't just frustration over strategy gone wrong or a poorly executed pit stop. This was the breaking point, the precise moment when trust between driver and team collapsed into ashes. For Hamilton, Ferrari was supposed to be more than just another employer. It was supposed to be a dream fulfilled, the ultimate chapter of his career, the chance to etch his name into history alongside the legends of Maranello. And yet, in a single afternoon in Baku, the dream had been shattered beyond repair, replaced by suspicion, bitterness, and the kind of resentment that leaves permanent scars. The paddock was alive with murmurs, every insider, mechanic, and rival team principal sensing that something historic had just occurred. The fallout was already beginning to take shape, with speculation swirling at breakneck speed. Was this simply a case of catastrophic incompetence, the kind of blunder that could be blamed on pressure and human error? Or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface, an act of deliberate sabotage, a calculated decision to undermine their own star driver? The questions refused to die, because the scenes unfolding before their eyes were too extraordinary, too explosive to be written off as an accident. The consequences will be nothing short of seismic, shaking not only Ferrari but the entire Formula One world. 4 weeks, and perhaps even months, the narrative will refuse to let go of this scandal. Every press conference, every column, every fan forum will dissect the moment Ferrari let Hamilton down in such spectacular, almost unthinkable fashion. The thought that one of the sport's greatest icons could be treated this way by its most iconic team is a storyline that no one will forget. Rival teams will smell blood in the water, journalists will circle like vultures hungry for every detail, and fans will debate endlessly whether Hamilton should walk away immediately or endure the chaos to fight another day. The Baku race itself, no matter who claimed the checkered flag, has already been overshadowed, consumed by the shockwaves of this implosion. In years to come, the winner's name will be a footnote, barely remembered, because the only story worth telling is the one that unfolded in the heart of the Ferrari garage and in the fury of Lewis Hamilton's eyes as he stormed out without a word. It will be remembered as the race where trust collapsed, where Ferrari's image cracked, and where Hamilton's fury became a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. This was not just an incident, it was an explosion powerful enough to shake the very foundations of the sport, a scandal that will echo across every corner of Formula One, leaving behind a trail of broken alliances, bitter accusations, and the sense that nothing will ever be the same again.